in previewing tonight's epic matchup between the Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets. A game which starts at 3 in the afternoon for me, and I don't know if I'll be home to watch any of the game. I'm really hoping I can, but it is my last day to get all of my stuff that I want out of my old apartment, so as epic as this looks, I don't know that I'm going to be able to see it. Now, it's important to discuss how they got here. So I'm going to take a look at the streaks. In Minnesota's case, their last loss was December 2nd. It was against Calgary. It was a shootout loss. December 4th, they then beat Edmonton 2-1 in overtime. December 7th, they beat Toronto 3-2. December 9th, they play Edmonton again. They won in a shootout 3-2. So they're winning. They're close. Minnesota then beat St. Louis 3-1 on the 11th. On the 13th, they beat Florida 5-1. 15th, they beat Nashville 5-2. Then on the 17th, they beat Arizona 4-1. Arizona has lost a lot of games. Just throwing that out there. Then they beat Colorado 2-0. Colorado has also lost a lot of games. On the 22nd, they went into Montreal, beat the Habs 4-2. Then on the 23rd, they spanked the Rangers 7-4. 27th, they play Nashville again. They win in overtime 3-2. And then on the 29th, they beat the Islanders 6-4. So there's been a lot of close games, some overtime in there, probably some lucky breaks. Columbus, their last loss came on November 23rd against Calgary. They lost 2-0. You can hear Flames fans now. See, we can beat the best team in the league. Columbus then beat the Lightning 5-3. Oh wait, I'm wrong. So Calgary beats them 2-0 on the 23rd. Columbus beats Tampa 5-3, then loses in a shootout to Florida 2-1. I had this loaded up like this to point something out. This could have been a 16-game winning streak if they'd won that shootout. After losing that shootout, they then beat Tampa Bay 5-1. On December 1st, they beat Colorado 3-2. So Colorado factors into both these streaks. They then beat Arizona in a shootout 3-2 on the 3rd. On the 5th, they played Arizona again, beat them 4-1. So Arizona and Colorado have played their roles in the longest winning streaks of the year. On the 9th, Columbus then beats Detroit 4-1. On the 10th, they beat the Islanders 6-2. On the 13th, they beat Edmonton 3-1. On the 16th, they beat Calgary 4-1. So sorry, Flames fans, but Columbus got their revenge. On the 18th, they blew a lead against Vancouver, but they ultimately won in overtime 4-3. And then in a shootout, they beat the Kings on the 20th 3-2. On the 22nd, and this was a game that I watched, and the first period seemed competitive, but it died off after that. They beat Pittsburgh 7-1. On the 23rd, they beat Montreal 2-1. On the 27th, they beat Boston 4-3 in a game that I was watching when I did a video here. And then on the 29th, they beat Winnipeg 5-3, and that's how we got here. So both teams have used the shootout to extend their winning streaks. This, to me, means that even if, let's say, Columbus wins today, and they go on and they beat that 17-game winning streak, there's an asterisk next to it. There has to be. There has to be an asterisk there because when Pittsburgh won their 17 in a row back in the 90s, there was no shootout. Those would have been ties. The winning streak that Pittsburgh put together was crazy. It was just crazy. Where Columbus wins my respect is this. Now, last year, everybody talked about how poor Columbus and their goaltending and everything was. But what sunk Columbus was their 8-game losing streak to start the season. And it wasn't just losses. They were spankings at the hands of like Ottawa and Toronto and teams like that in October, and they could never get out of it. There's no team in the league, I don't think, that could get themselves out of an 0-8 start. Like not even a shootout loss or an overtime loss. They were just straight losses. So 8 losses in a row at the start of the season for Columbus, and they tried to dig their way out. Let me go ahead and grab Mr. I'm trying to remember where they ended up last year in terms of their point total. Believe me, I'm not just going to read off the winning streaks here, because this is about more than that for these teams. For Columbus, they ended up last season with 76 points in 82 games, which means there were 2 games above 500 after that horrendous start. Now, how they got to where they are right now. Minnesota has made the playoffs the last 4 years in a row. Columbus has missed the last 2 years. This would be the first year they've made it since 14 when they lost to the Penguins. It's going to be a very competitive game today. But in terms of who's been more impressive during their winning streak, it's been kind of both at certain points. Minnesota's been better at the end of it. They seem to be getting better as the streak goes along. Columbus has had some hiccups and overcome them. I think of games against Boston and Vancouver where they really could have lost them, but they didn't. And the good teams don't lose those games. But looking ahead at their schedule, after tonight, Minnesota doesn't play again until they start a road trip on the 5th of January. San Jose, LA, and Anaheim are on the tap then. Then they go home to Montreal, and then they're in Dallas and Chicago. I can't see, if they win today, I can't see them winning all of those games. For Columbus, if they win today and they make it 15, people are going to start talking a lot more about the Penguins winning streak. And again, I pointed out why, in my eyes, it's not the same thing. It's apples and oranges. Their next game's at home to Edmonton. Then they're in Washington, and they're at home against the Rangers. So on the 7th against the Rangers, that would be the game where they would break the record. And that's doable. Those 3 wins, they could get them. Those are 3 winnable games. Before this season, Columbus's longest winning streak was 9. Before this year and this streak, the longest winning streak for Minnesota was 9. So these teams both came into the league at the same time. They both came in the 2000-2001 season. They both came into this season as teams that were expected to be at or near the bottom. I didn't think Minnesota was going to be at the bottom. I didn't think they were going to be as good as they've been. I watched some of their games early on in the season, and I mentioned on my channel, I think these guys are contenders, and people thought that was a weird thing to say. But there's something in Minnesota's game that is just playoff hockey. And it doesn't translate to wins during every regular season game. But it's the kind of hockey that if you can keep playing it and stick with it, it will start to turn your season around. And Columbus, with them, I've just seen them powering their way through other teams. And both teams have fantastic goaltenders. Bobrovsky and Dubnyk get huge props here. Bobrovsky was dumped by Philly. Philly decided for the 18th time in 10 years to change their goaltending. And Mason's had some good games here and there for Philly, went on a good streak during the 10-game winning streak. But Bobrovsky's the better goaltender. And it's not really close. During the summer, I stated that I felt Bobrovsky was still one of the top 10 goalies in the league. Some people didn't agree with me on that. I would have no problem getting him in that top 10 now. I don't think I'd have a lot of argument. And for Minnesota, Dubnyk was abandoned by the Oilers. Went through the Montreal organization and the Arizona organization. Arizona, in particular, I find kind of weird because, let me see, he did actually play. I think he only played the one game. But it's strange to look at. I mean, Dubnyk's record right now is fantastic, and everybody talks about how great he is. Okay, so he's traded to Nashville by Edmonton for Matt Hendricks. Now, Nashville, everybody, talks about Nashville and where they're at. Imagine if Nashville had picked up Dubnyk and traded Rene back in 2011, no, 2014. Everybody would have thought they were insane. And in 2 games in Nashville, he was 0-1-1 with a 4.35 goals against. Gets sent down to the Edmonton Oilers, sent him down to the Hamilton Bulldogs as well. He was 2-5 with the Bulldogs with the 3.33 goals against. He was traded to Montreal by Nashville for future considerations on March 5th. Signed as a free agent by Arizona July 1st. And was traded to Minnesota by Arizona. Traded Minnesota by Arizona for a third-round pick in the 2015 draft. Now, I've watched Mike Smith play games for Arizona this year, and Smith's been good at times. Put Dubnyk in that net instead, and I think you're going to see quite a difference. Now, Dubnyk played 67 games last year, played 39 the year before for Minnesota, 19 for Arizona before that. And Dubnyk's numbers have been startling. Startling. And I know there's Oilers fans who chomp at the bit and oh, if only we kept him. It's fine. I mean, Oilers have Talbot. Talbot's a pretty good goaltender too. But, man, this matchup, you've got 2 goaltenders that were cast-offs. You've got teams that are made up mostly of guys who either, in Nick Foligno's case, he's kind of a cast-off from where he'd been before. And, I mean, Seth Jones was sent from Nashville. Well, we don't need this guy kind of thing. Losing Ryan Johansson hurt Columbus last year. Doesn't seem to be hurting them this year. Jack Johnson's a story for me. I took a lot of shots at Jack Johnson during the summer. He's been fantastic this year. I don't know if something happened with his off-season regimen. I don't know if he got himself in better shape. What happened, but Jack Johnson's game has really dramatically come around. And all the numbers show it. Zach Werenski has been a revelation on the Columbus Blue Line as well. Could very well be the Calder Trophy winner. I think you'd have a hard time arguing that he shouldn't be the Calder Trophy winner. I know there's a lot of good rookies out there before everybody starts typing. For my money, it's Werenski. Because you can come in and score goals. You can come in as a forward and play well. But to come in as a defenseman, play top 4 minutes, play against some of the best players in the league, and still put up really good numbers, that is intimidating. And Werenski, in my eyes, could be a bigger star on the blue line than Aaron Ekblad down in Florida. And for a fraction of the cap hit right now, of course, because he's still in his entry level. And in Minnesota, you've got Ryan Suter on the blue line, who a lot of people, when he went to Minnesota, said, well, can he play without Weber? Yeah, he can. You have Jonas Brodin, a high first-round pick that kind of fell off the charts last year, and now he's back up. And you've got Eric Stahl leading the offense. He was cast off. He was supposed to be done. And there's offense by committee on both teams. And they're both coached by coaches, and Bruce Boudreau and John Tortorella, who at certain points in time, people have said, well, the game's passed them by. They're done. They've had their last chance. So there's a lot of similarities between these two teams. The 2000 expansion is one that's not really talked a whole lot about, but it's Minnesota and Columbus. Minnesota had been in the league before as the Minnesota North Stars, and Columbus is Columbus. It's not a sexy city like New York or Toronto, Montreal. It's not, it's Columbus. So not a lot gets said, but wow, this game today has the potential to be one of the best games of the year. And there's a lot of good games on today, but I wanted to do a special video just discussing Columbus and Minnesota and how these teams got here. And neither of them were viewed before the season started as contenders. A lot of preseason predictions had Minnesota finishing dead last in their division. Columbus as well. Let's see, this is the sports forecaster that I got this year. I'm just going to take a quick look at where they had everybody finishing. They had Minnesota dead last in their division and Columbus 6th in their division. So let's take a look now that we're 20 games into the season. Let's look over what they had to say about both teams before the season started, because it is interesting. Oh, that's Dallas. Talk about how great Dallas is. Okay. Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus Blue Jackets, even. Central casting for Columbus hockey drama. The only thing the Blue Jackets won last season was the unofficial Oscar for Best Hockey Drama. The decision to replace head coach Todd Richards after an 0-7-0 start touched off a series of events that observers never saw coming. The first plot twist was the hiring of grizzled, old-school veteran John Tortorella to replace Richards behind the bench. As the Jackets' new world turned, Torts and number one center Ryan Johansson engaged in a tortured love-hate, mostly hate, relationship that was destined to fail. Sure enough, Johansson was traded to Nashville in January for stud defenseman Seth Jones. If that brought peace to the Ohio capital, you could not tell by on-ice results. The Jackets were only marginally better under their fiery new bench boss. The Johansson deal also meant that GM Jarmo Kekalainen had dispatched two of his centers, including Artem Anisimov, within a 7-month window with no apparent plan to replace them. Brandon Dubinsky and youngsters Alexander Wenberg and William Karlsson move up the depth chart with predictable results. While Wenberg went on to lead the team in assists, none could replace Johansson's overall production. Dubinsky is tough and industrious, but does not fit the model. Could be up to 30-goal scorer Boone Jenner to assume full-time duty in the middle. Wenberg showed great promise as a pure playmaker and flourished with more ice time. The best news for the franchise came from the AHL Outpost months after the Jacket season ended. The Lake Erie Monsters won the league championship thanks to a core of good young prospects. Rookie pro Oliver Bjorkstrand scored the title-clinching goal in overtime, his 10th tally in 17 postseason games. Teen defenseman Zach Werenski, barely out of college, played a definitive role in his pro debut. Power winger Josh Anderson and center Lucas Sedlak turned in career-defining performances. At least two of these playoff heroes will wear Columbus colors this season. It's a good starting point for the club. Sedlak and Anderson were both in the lineup the last time I watched them. I like Sedlak. I do. I think Sedlak's better than I'd expected. And Werenski, of course, I've talked about. Bjorkstrand, he's not there right now. So that's Columbus. Apparently this year's a starting point. Minnesota. Mike Yeo was relieved of his coaching duties late in his fifth season with the Wild after 3 straight trips to the playoffs. Tough, right? Well, he'll get no sympathy from his successor. Bruce Boudreau's career winning percentage is the highest of any active NHL coach and better than any mark belonging to retired better than the mark belonging to retired scouting coach. I don't think my tongue's woken up yet today. Let's try that sentence again, shall we? Bruce Boudreau's career winning percentage is the highest of any active NHL coach and better than the mark belonging to retired coaching legend Scotty Bowman, albeit with a much smaller sample size. Yet, Boudreau still got sacked by the Anaheim Ducks after the team underachieved in April. It's not just what you've done that matters, it's when you've done it. The playoffs count for everything. For all his regular season success, Boudreau has yet to take a team to a Stanley Cup final. There were other openings, including an attractive gig in Ottawa, but Boudreau chose the Twin Cities, where he has some history. He began his professional playing career in the long-gone World Hockey Association as a 21-year-old with the Minnesota Fighting Saints. True. He inherits a veteran-led team with an established nucleus that may take one last best shot at a deep postseason run before perhaps making sweeping changes next summer. Mikko Koivu, Zach Parise, and Ryan Suter are all playing on the back nine of their illustrious careers. In Anaheim, Boudreau had an excellent young defense core, 2 superb goalkeepers, and elite forwards Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry. He crafted the NHL's best special teams, first in power play and penalty killing efficiency last season. The Wild stacks up comparatively well on the blue line with youth, depth, and savvy, led by minute muncher Suter, and they can count on goaltending tandem of Devin Dubnyk and Darcy Kemper. Deciding who plays the roles of Getzlaf and Perry is where Boudreau may prove his worth or fall short. Parise is the obvious choice for the sharpshooter role a la Perry, while free agent pickup Eric Staal is a fascinating option for the top center job. He'll be playing 6 hours from his hometown of Thunder Bay, Ontario, and is looking to redeem himself after a lackluster performance with the Rangers. That's it. That's all they have to say about him. So there you go. In both the preseason ramble for Columbus and Minnesota, there's no talk of contending. There's talk of Minnesota's going to have problems because they don't have Getzlaf and Perry. Last time I checked last night, Anaheim's not the best team in the league right now. So maybe Boudreau played a larger role in the success of the Ducks than he gets credit for. That stands to reason. Coaches don't get the credit when you win, but they take all the blame when you lose. Because, of course, people say, oh, well, it's the players on the ice. It's the coach that decides when each player gets on the ice and who they play against. Anyways, this is my first of 2 videos that I'm doing this morning. There was an article on Sportsnet that I have to answer because it's aggravatingly dumb and simplified and dumb. So I'm going to answer that. But I figured I would put this up first because I know a lot of people are going to be watching this game and it's going to be a good one. And it's interesting because they both came into the league at the same time. And there are a lot of parallels between these two teams. And they both deserve a lot of respect. If Columbus hadn't lost 2 out of 3 against Boston, just imagine how much farther ahead they'd be. And if they hadn't lost that one shootout game, they'd be at 16 games for a winning streak. But again, when your winning streak includes shootout wins, I do think that it should have an asterisk there. It's like when you're on an undefeated streak and you don't include shootout and overtime losses as defeats. And I've seen that where without a regulation loss. And it's like, no, but they still lost. Like, this is where we're at now, where all these streaks don't mean anything. But this one's fun, and it is the 2 largest winning streaks that have ever faced off against each other in NHL history. So it is worthy of its own video, and it's a little longer than my other ones have been lately, but I think there's a lot to discuss here and to get into before the game. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're just passing through. It's a popular thing to do these days, and I will talk to you all again soon.